So hello everyone and welcome to this session of English 204. This week, week 6, which means that we still have 8 more weeks. Yay! We're going to start working on how to think about our arguments and how to build them. This week, we will learn about critical thinking and writing arguments, and we're going to do it in different steps. We have nothing due, but as I told you in my message, I really want you and need you to go through these steps in the right order and to actually complete them and do them because they can be very, very beneficial for you in this course with this paper and in the future whenever you're approaching any research paper that you're working on for any other course at this university or even elsewhere. So I've listed for you over here a number of videos that I want you to review. We're going to be reviewing 2 of them today. You're going to be working on distinguishing fact from opinion on your own. We're going to go over analyzing the argument today because they're 5 minutes each. This one is a 3-minute video. This one is a 7-minute video. So all in all, they're very short, but they are very important. So I want you to watch the videos in the right order and take notes. And as I said, I repeat, you do not have an assignment to submit, but you will need this information in the coming weeks to learn how you're going to be building your argument. Now, after we're done with the 2 videos, we're going to go over your thesis statements and review them. So you're going to be doing some work. So this means that you're not going to be just like passively listening to me today. You're not going to have a chance to just keep me on and go have a quick nap like my daughter did today in one of her classes, and she actually got busted. So I'm so happy she did. So don't tell her that. We are going to begin right now with video number 1. So what I want you to do is tell me if you can hear this. I'm not going to be able to put my screen in full screen mode because it will disconnect. Just let me know that if you can hear it or...
Hi there. When we talk, write, or tell a story,
So is it okay? Could you hear the guy? Cool. Okay.
we want to
Perfect.
communicate something. Sometimes the information is pretty straightforward, as in 1 + 1 = 2, but a lot of times what we share is not so straightforward, so we may need to argue the point. But when someone presents an argument, you don't simply accept it, or do you? Shouldn't you analyze it to see if it's a sound argument? Stick around and let's talk about analyzing the argument. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. I'm Mark Franco. An argument, or a logical argument, is a set of ideas put together to support a point. For example, this is a very simple argument. You like Japanese food, so you'll love the sushi restaurant. The claim is that because you like this, you'll also like that. But is it a good argument? If you understand really well what an argument is, you can then build strong arguments that support your ideas when you speak or write. And of course, when you listen to or read someone's arguments, you can also make sure that the arguments are well built or convincing. To build an argument, you need statements or claims. One of these claims is a conclusion. The other claims are premises. They provide evidence to support your conclusion. Let's look at a very simple example. Hawaii has hot weather year-round and beautiful beaches, so it is the best place for a vacation. There are 3 claims in this argument. The main point, or the conclusion, is that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation. 2 premises support this claim. 1, Hawaii has hot weather year-round, and 2, Hawaii has beautiful beaches. Let's see how well this argument works. What supports the point that Hawaii is the best place for a vacation? One of the premises used as evidence is that it's hot there year-round. Well, if you like hot weather, yes, but what if you don't? And what if you'd rather go skiing? The other premise is that Hawaii has beautiful beaches. How do you define beautiful? Why beaches in Hawaii? Aren't there other places in the world with beautiful beaches? What if you prefer the mountains or the city? We're not trying to prove or disprove that Hawaii is a great place for a vacation. We're simply analyzing the argument in this example. Even if you agree that Hawaii is a great vacation spot, you may decide that this argument doesn't make a good case for Hawaii. Let's look at another example. See if you can identify the claims and which is presented as the conclusion and which are the premises that support that conclusion. Cell phones pose serious risks to their users. Several studies have shown a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors. Hardell. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, IARC, classifies cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. Pause the video now if you need time to identify the claims. Premise 1 is here. Premise 2 is here. The main point, or the conclusion, is here. But wait, before you swear never to use a cell phone again, let's analyze the argument. Look at the premises again and ask questions. Are there problems with these premises? Is there sufficient evidence to support the conclusion? Researchers have found a correlation between cell phone use and the development of brain tumors. How good were these studies? A correlation does not mean that cell phones were the cause. Are there studies maybe that found no correlation? The second premise is that they classified cell phones as a possible cause of cancer. A possible cause of cancer means the evidence is not definitive. Did they make that classification based on the same studies mentioned in premise 1? If so, this premise is a bit redundant. Again, right or wrong, we're just analyzing the argument. As a critical thinker, you must challenge your assumptions and other people's assumptions. Just because something is in writing doesn't mean it's a fact or the truth. Even if a conclusion is based on facts, it doesn't mean it's a good conclusion. You may want to take another look at our video about distinguishing fact from opinion for more information on this. Snap Language has videos about reading, writing, and other topics. Knowing how to use the language well helps you think critically. Therefore, you should subscribe to this channel so you can get smarter through language.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second here. And so basically, what the video is talking about is how we support a solid argument. And oftentimes, what happens is that we think that we are supporting our argument with facts, with research, but in reality, most of the time we're not. In a sense, I don't want to say most of the time we're not, unless we actively and carefully think about it, we might commit a lot of errors as we're doing that. So there is a very big difference between a premise that is sound, that is based on research, that is verifiable, and a premise that we just, found somewhere or heard or we think about. I have to share with you that because of the fact that I'm always questioning everything, I do not have a lot of friends because everybody is always upset with me that I do not take things at face value. Like every time somebody tells me something, I'm always questioning them. Like for example, when people tell me what a beautiful weather we have today, I look at them and I say, what do you mean we have a beautiful weather? How can weather be qualified as beautiful? And they say because it's sunny, there's not a single cloud in the sky, the temperature is amazing. It's just the perfect temperature of 23 degrees. It's not too hot, it's not too cold. And, of course, they try to justify their answer of why they think it's a beautiful weather today. Well, come to think of it, in a country like the United Arab Emirates, almost every single day is a sunny day, unless you have a sandstorm or it's cloudy for whatever reason. So we don't really think about it as a strange occurrence. However, you have to remember, the reason we have such a statement in English is because of English, like England English. And what is known about England? What is known about London in specific is that they have crappy weather, right? They don't have a lot of sunny days. It's cloudy most days. So whenever they have a sunny day, it's a rare occurrence. And so they celebrate it, they give it some adjectives like beautiful and magnificent and lovely. And we have somehow, because of the language, it's somehow seeped into our thinking as this is the acceptable thing to say. What a beautiful day it is today. But guess what? There are some people out there who absolutely love rain, who absolutely love it when it's cloudy, when it's gloomy, when it's cold. And to me, for example, this is a lovely day whenever it's raining, right? I love it. I just enjoy it. It's time for me to just like cozy up under a fluffy blanket at home, watch TV, sip hot chocolate. It's just beautiful. But I'm not going around and saying, oh, what a lovely day it is today. Because to me, a weather cannot be qualified as lovely or not lovely. It's just weather, and it's a weather occurrence. It's like a natural thing to occur. It's a natural phenomenon. In fact, when it doesn't rain, we have to be worried because trees need to drink. Nature needs to cleanse itself. This cycle of rain and sunshine and wind and everything is necessary for nature, for the ecological system. I'm not an expert here, so I can't tell you how things work very well, but I know for a fact that nature cannot thrive without rain. Okay, so it's funny how sometimes we just make statements or conclusions or claims such as Hawaii is an amazing vacation destination without really thinking based on what premises are we saying this. If it's just, the weather is so beautiful the whole time and, the beaches, well, guess what? First of all, they don't have sandy beaches in Hawaii. They import sand every year from various countries. And the sand is so, I don't want to call it fake. I don't know what the right term for it is, but it's very coarse. It looks like almost like it's man-made. It's very coarse, and thank you, it's artificial. And then it's very windy in Hawaii. So when they take pictures of the sandy beaches in Hawaii, they're almost always empty. There's a very good reason why they're almost always empty. Number one, it's usually windy. And because they have this artificial coarse sand over there, and with the wind, it actually hurts to walk on the beach because the sand is always slamming you, and it hurts. And the other thing is they have these beautiful blue oceans, but they have these strong water currents, and you feel like you're going to be dragged into the ocean at any second. You can't swim. You can't really swim in the ocean. You can surf maybe. You can. You can't sunbathe even. You have to sit by a pool. So it's it's crazy. I mean, to me, it's beautiful if you want to go hiking, maybe to Hawaii. It's beautiful for people who live in the United States, for example, in cold areas, and they want this kind of escape maybe around Christmas. They want to go somewhere warm. Awesome. But this doesn't make it all that amazing. And so if we think about the premise on which we're building our claim that Hawaii is like heaven on earth, no, it's not. And we can argue against that if you want. So long story short, when we think about our premises, we have to think, and you've already done that for your thesis statement, you've thought about your premises, what supports your claim, and you did it in a way by escaping a step. So you have helped yourselves by creating a research question. And so the answer to the research question is your claim, right? This is your claim, and the support is already embedded in there. So so I want to hear from you, like, how can we change the statement about Hawaii to make it acceptable as a claim? Any ideas? You can unmute yourself and tell me, or you can type it down.
We can make it relative.
Yes, we can make it relative. Yes. Any suggestions on how to do that?
So we say that Hawaii is an amazing place if you like hot weather because it's hot all year around.
Yes.
Or if you like the beaches.
Or maybe Hawaii is one a good vacation spot for people who live in cold weather, right? Like, for example, in for people in Nebraska, maybe. I don't know if Nebraska is very cold. No. Montana. The people in Montana usually love the cold, so I'm not sure. But we can say that people live in cold weather truly enjoy vacationing in Hawaii because of its warm weather, right? So here our claim might be a little bit more acceptable. But for somebody who lives in Lebanon to go and vacation in Hawaii, it's just for show off. It's just for you to go and say that you've been to Hawaii. Because otherwise, seriously, it's not worth it to travel halfway around the world and pay that much money. Not that any of us can afford it nowadays. So you can just vacation in Hawaii. It's good to go there if you can, just so you can say that I've been to Hawaii, I've visited it, I know what it looks like, etc. And guess what? Another interesting fact about Hawaii, when I got there, I realized that most of the pictures that I have seen on the internet or in magazines have been color enhanced. It's like they used filters on them before filters were a thing. So it's very interesting. Adam is saying we can describe Hawaii as one of the best tropical destinations. Yeah. Even though I know that there are some really, really nice tropical destinations, even nicer than Hawaii, but I think it has to do with like a marketing thing that happened sometime in the 70s or 80s that made Hawaii a big deal. And then I think it was also like a way the United States somehow like marketed for Hawaii for several political reasons. Because don't forget, it was a naval base before. It was a base for the Navy. And it was filled with people who were like naval officers and their families, etc. Yeah, it's like what happened with the Mona Lisa and the hype around it. Yes, thank you. So when we think about our claims, and you're going to see this in the video about Tolman's model argument. The claim, sometimes we take it at face value, especially nowadays. We listen to a claim and we take it at face value. If we question it, sometimes we question maybe the sayer and say, how do you know? And if we're told that this person, for example, is a doctor, then we listen to them and we take it, like we take what they say as dogma, which we've seen in the past couple of months has been problematic on so many different levels, especially when it comes to COVID. Any doctor calls into any TV show in Lebanon at any time and says, I am a doctor who works in I don't know which hospital in the United States, and then I have to warn the Lebanese public against using or taking the COVID vaccine and this and that. We've talked about this in the past. So they use their authority instead of just science and facts to make certain claims based on unknown premises. Okay, so let's take a look at another video, but before we do that, do you have any questions? Anything at all? Okay. We're going to take a look at the second video.
The previous video was about understanding how an argument is built so we can read it critically and see if the argument is logical. Make sure you watch that video first. Now, one way to analyze the argument is to look closely at the evidence the writer presents and ask if it is relevant and sufficient. So stick around and let's talk about evaluating the evidence. Hi, welcome to Snap Language. Mark Franco here. So, to build an argument, we present a series of claims that lead to a conclusion. Of course, the premises in the argument must support the conclusion in a way that makes sense. Of course. You'd be surprised, though. Even an argument that appears to make sense may not be really strong. It may not even be a valid argument. Let's look at a fairly obvious example first. X-Town is a great place to live. It has many parks and recreation areas where you can relax and exercise. Its parks have vast green areas including trees and wildflowers. The X-Town Public Library was founded in 1841, making it one of the oldest libraries in the area. In this simple paragraph, the topic is X-Town. The point the author wants to make is that X-Town is a great place to live. The author presented 3 premises to support this conclusion. Now, looking at each premise closely, the first is that X-Town has many parks and recreation areas. That's actually good evidence. Most people would agree that this makes any town a good place to live. The next premise is that the parks are green and beautiful. Well, that's more information about the park still. What else is there? The final premise is that X-Town has an old library. Oh, that's great, but the conclusion is that it's a great place to live. Having an old library is interesting, but it's not quite relevant to that conclusion. That's not very closely related to the claim. It doesn't provide adequate support. So pretty parks is good evidence. An old library, not so much. Is that all? Typically, when you think of a good place to live, you think of safety, good jobs and schools, shops and restaurants, good transportation, and so forth. The author here said nice things about X-Town, but one relevant piece of evidence isn't quite enough to support a conclusion. X-Town is a very safe place to live. Take a quick stroll around town and you will likely run into friendly and helpful people. A study showed a 60% decrease in robberies and burglaries in recent years. No violent crimes were reported last year. What's the point or the conclusion here? Does the author present sufficient evidence to support that conclusion? Is the evidence relevant to the conclusion? Pause the video and see if you can answer these questions. Did you pause the video? The main point here is that Xtown is a safe place to live. Starting from the bottom here, no one reported any violent crimes last year. Yes, that's relevant to being a safe place. But what about previous years? Maybe last year was different somehow? The writer also mentioned no violent crimes. How about other types of crimes? But overall, no violent crime could mean it's a safe place, so let's say it's okay evidence for now. Besides, we must consider all the evidence, so let's continue. There was a 60% reduction in crimes. That sounds good. Well, that's 60% of what number? If there were, say, 1,000 crimes before, 60% fewer than 1,000 is still a lot of crimes. A writer often includes a study and statistics or data because they provide strong support to a claim, and readers tend to believe this type of information. As critical readers, we know sometimes it only sounds good. We still need to ask questions to see if any piece of information truly supports the main point, regardless where the information comes from. Finally, you'll run into a lot of friendly, helpful people in Xtown. The point is that it's a safe place, not how nice the people are. As you can see, even when it appears there's good information to support a conclusion, you should always evaluate the evidence. Did the author present sufficient information? Is all the information good and relevant to the conclusion? In this paragraph, not so much. I'm not saying you should never believe anything you read. If we trust the source, it's very likely the writer will do their best to support their claims and provide sufficient and relevant information. But we don't want to learn something that's not very accurate, right? We don't want people to persuade us to believe something unless they give us very good reasons to do so. So we should always read critically, always make sure conclusions are logical and accurate, and supported by sufficient and relevant information. Is that all? Yes, pretty much. So next time you read something, look closely. I often put extra information in the description box below a video, so take a look.
Okay, so this gives us a little bit more information about arguments. Sometimes, when he stated his argument about how Xtown is a safe place to live in, it made sense, right? Like, people are friendly. There was a reduction, 60% reduction in crime rate. And then, what was the third one? No violent crimes were reported in the last year. So it's actually good enough, right? But upon further investigation, you will see that it is not necessarily all that, right? It can be relevant, but then there are some lingering questions about it. So what you have to ask yourself is that, is the support sufficient? Is it good? And is it relevant? So these are three very important points to study or to think about whenever you're writing your arguments. This is primarily the reason why I made you write the tentative answer to your research question, which is your thesis statement, before you went to look for evidence and research, because I want you to think about what is logical, what makes sense to answer this question before you went and tried to find support. Because you're smart enough, you're knowledgeable enough, so you can have your own ideas about the subject. And then we have a tendency to sometimes get lost in the research. If we go out there and we find support, we have a tendency to lose our ideas, lose our our smart and logical ideas in the research, and try to adopt what everybody else is saying. Now, if we are to go back to the thesis statements, the documents. Let's take a look at, for example, I want to see, okay, let's take a look at this one here by Noor and Aline. They ask, how does the movie Dead Poets Society portray the relationship between the literature of the Romantic period and young adults' mental health today? So basically, they're asking a very straightforward question. How does a movie portray a relationship between 1 and 2? And they say, through poetic references, the effects Romanticism has on young adults' mental health are prominent as it encourages self-expression, expands the imagination, and shapes a depth and perspective. So they have chosen three premises that they're going to be looking at or investigating in order to prove this relationship. Now, whether these 3 points are good or not, they will find out as they're doing their research. They might end up switching a little bit. They might end up changing a little bit their thesis statement. And that's why it's called tentative thesis statement, because nothing is final until the final paper comes out. It can keep on changing. And don't be alarmed if your thesis statement changes. It all depends on your research. But as a starting point, this is a very good start. Let's take a look at this one here. Or actually, no, I want something a little bit... Okay. So I like this one. This one is a straightforward one. How do the different psychological interventions strengthen the emotional and physical well-being of adult cancer patients in Lebanon? So basically, the 3 researchers, Karine, Ruby, and Brahim, are looking at the different psychological interventions that help the emotional and physical well-being of adult cancer patients in Lebanon. Simple question, but it's deep, and it is it's actually broad. You can write a 100-page paper on this. But let's see how they have fixed it. They said, despite the crucial role that medical treatments play in a cancer patient's life. So they're putting here the other side, which is it's we have medical treatments that are very important. Psychological interventions such as meditation, support group therapy, and hypnosis, among others, have been proven to help adult Lebanese patients cope with anxiety and stress. First thing, improve their outlook on life, and manage chronic pain. So whether they choose to develop the psychological interventions or this remains up to them. Maybe in the background paragraph, they'll talk about the different psychological interventions such as meditation, support group therapy, and hypnosis. And then they're going to show us how these psychological interventions help first with anxiety and stress, improve the patient's outlook on life, giving them hope to live, something to look forward to, etc., and manage chronic pain. So these are the 3 things that Karine, Ruby, and Brahim are claiming that psychological interventions help with. So this is a solid tentative thesis statement. They might find out that there are other ways, like for example, they might find that improving their outlook on life might not be a very strong argument, and instead replace it with something else. But so far, it looks good, right? And so it's clear. So in a sense, here what we did in our exercises we have made sure that through writing a solid research question and then attempting to answer it, we have somehow come up with good claims. It's a claim that, or one claim, if I may say so. Now, how do we develop these claims to make sure that they are solid and well supported, have sufficient support, good support, and relevant support? We'll do that over the next couple of weeks, especially after we go through Toulmin's model argument. Now, this video, I've tried to keep it as short as possible, so I've kept it to 7 minutes and 18 seconds. And in it, I explain exactly how Toulmin has developed his model argument. There are several different types of arguments. As I mentioned in week 1, so many different types of arguments. But I like to rely on Toulmin's because it's thorough and it works most of the time, especially for social science, the social sciences. Now, of course, you're going to learn different things depending on your discipline and the different courses that you take on research design, methodologies, etc., in your different discipline. I know Lian, for example, is taking a course similar to this one, but it's specific for literature. So there she will be learning maybe different approaches. Okay. Any questions that you have so far? Everything is fine? No? Yes? Okay, so let me pause the recording. So in short, what I want you to do is go over the videos, watch them as they are listed in the right order, take some notes, keep them in mind, because you're going to be using everything you've learned in these videos, especially the Toulmin model argument, in order to develop your arguments later on, especially when we get to the point where we are working on our outline. Next week, let me show you what we're going to be doing next week. So next week, we're going to be finding and selecting sources. We've already done one assignment of annotating, so we know how to find a source, but we're going to be doing an activity. So you're going to be rewriting your research question and thesis statement, find 3 sources that support your thesis statement, cite each source, and I think I mentioned somewhere that I think how many people do how many number of sources. I think you can, if you're like a team of 3, each person finds a source. If you're a team of 2, you agree among yourselves what to do. If you're a team of 4, then you have to find 4 articles. So it's important. And then, you know, but these should be directly related to your thesis statements. It's not a difficult task at all. So this is what you will be doing next week. Right? I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording, and that's it for this time.